Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Whalen. So I'm in a new location today.
Yeah.
I'm in the living room because since Ashley's already been back at work for like a week, but since tomorrow is her first day of school back with kids, she wants to wake up a little bit extra early tomorrow, relative to this recording, of course, and so she was like, I love you, but I don't want to be waiting around for you guys to finish. And I was like, that's fine.
That's pretty smart, I guess.
Yeah. I was like, I can record in the living room. I mean, people watching, I've got my Labyrinth poster, my Beetlejuice poster, and my Big Lebowski poster that you can't really see.
You can see the bottoms of them, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, all you see is the inn of Labyrinth, the people of Beetlejuice, and then Big.
Just say it's Tom Hanks's Big, and we'll just move on.
Dude, I don't think Ashley has seen that movie.
Oh, it's not bad. She should.
I agree, because I love Big.
Yeah. I don't really have any sort of. Oh, I do have recommendations.
I was about to say you watched something that I've been really excited to watch.
Yeah, you're right. I did. So after I watched the movie for the show today, Peacock, shout out to Peacock, added the Bike Riders to the platform, and so I put on the Bike Riders, and it was awesome. Jeff Nichols directing, perfect. Michael Shannon is amazing in his small role. Of course, Austin Butler is great. Tom Hardy, transcendent as always. It was great.
Did Austin? Is this pre Elvis or post Elvis?
Hard to say. It's his voice is it's not too Elvis-y. I would say it's
because didn't they film Dune Part 2 right before he booked Elvis or something like that?
Oh, I couldn't tell you that. I don't know.
I don't remember. Oh no.
Yeah, the Bike Riders, man. It's great.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it, man, and as soon as I read the cast list, I was like, sold. I don't need to see a trailer. Like, I will go see this movie. And then the strike happened. I was like, well, we're never getting this movie now. I guess I should just make my peace with it.
Man, we were supposed to get it, maybe 6 months before it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, those of you who aren't familiar with Jeff Nichols, I would recommend Shotgun Stories, Take Shelter, and Mud for sure. Those three, I think, are quintessential Jeff Nichols.
Mud's with Matthew McConaughey, right?
Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, and Sam Shepard is also in that one, and he's fantastic in that. Michael Shannon is in, I believe, every Jeff Nichols movie. I saw Midnight Special, which was okay. I liked it, but I didn't love it like I do his other stuff, and I didn't see Loving. So, with Joel Egerton, based on their last name is Loving. That's the yeah. I didn't see that either, but I probably will eventually, and I'm sure that Michael Shannon is in it.
Yeah. Now that it's on Peacock, I want to watch it. And Monkey Man. Monkey Man's on Peacock.
Oh yeah, Monkey Man's great. Yeah.
The only thing I really saw recently, Ashley and I went and saw Twisters, which wasn't bad. It was really good. I mean, I think they did a really good job of telling an original story in sort of this, kind of the same way as Twister. And something I really liked is they cut out sort of the romance part of it from the original Twister. I mean, granted, it's implied that Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones are they're
sweet on one another.
They're definitely gonna mash parts at some point.
They're gonna smush.
Yeah, they gotta put on the Pontiac Bandit Smush tunes. But no, I really enjoyed it. I looked at your letterbox rating of 3.5, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, it was solid 3.5. Like, it was good. I enjoyed it. I don't have anything negative to say about it. Would I watch it again? Probably.
Cool.
I think the only reason why for me it didn't become a 4, and this isn't the movie's fault. So Synergy was doing a free movie ticket for teachers. So Ashley got a free ticket, and we just had to pay for mine. Well, we thought, even though this movie's been out for 2 weeks and Deadpool and Wolverine is still dominating the box office right now, we didn't think that theater was going to be busy at all. And it was one of the situations where we had to tell the guy, like, hey, like, she's a teacher. We're here for the free movie ticket. And he's like, yeah, cool. He's like, okay. And he pulls up on his screen. He's like, yeah, so if you guys want to select your seats real quick. And as you know, I like to sit in the middle of the theater. So we're like, yeah, we'll sit right here in E. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say, if they're in blue, they're taken. If they're gray, they're available.
Oh boy.
And we're like, oh, okay. So we re-looked. The only available seats were the 2 front rows. So the whole time I'm sitting there like, cool. For those of you listening, we were just really close to the screen, and I had to stare up the whole time.
But it's like, them sky sharks are coming right at you. That's what tornadoes are. They're sky sharks. They're just coming right at you.
Well, and what's funny is when I was younger and I used to go to the movies with my mom, before there was assigned seating, I would always sit in the front row. But now that I'm older, I'm like, no, I don't want to crane my neck like that.
No.
I want to enjoy the movie.
No.
So, but again, that's not the movie's fault. That's the movie theater's fault. I mean, one could say it is the movie's fault for being so popular that it was still basically full. But
damn you, Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar Jones.
Dude, that Glenn Powell is so hot right now. I called Mom as soon as we left the theater, and I was like, go see Twisters. And she was like, okay. Like, I've been debating on it. It was good. I was like, yeah, it was good. And she was like, how was Glenn Powell? Apparently she's madly in love. Apparently she's madly in love with Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell. And I know. And I'm like, I mean, he was fantastic. I mean, being from Texas, he knows how to play a hick really well.
Two seats down from us, a woman audibly made a noise when he walked outside in the rain, in his white shirt.
Was she like?
I mean, it was something. I was like, cool it, bitch. This ain't Magic Mike, man. Relax.
I know. God. That's funny.
Yeah, it was crazy. But no, it was fun. Yeah, Twisters is good. It's a good time.
Yeah, it's a good time. Good. To quote my mother when she saw Deadpool and Wolverine, a good summer blockbuster romp.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't call that about Deadpool and Wolverine. I'd call that movie fucking awesome. But Twisters, yeah, good summer blockbuster romp.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So Jeremy, for the first time in 3 weeks, you got to finally pick an episode.
I did.
What are we talking about today?
All right. This week we are discussing Martin Scorsese's adaptation of Dennis Lehane's Shutter Island.
So like I mentioned last week, this was a first watch for me. Nice. I knew the twist because I want to say I was working at the drive-in when this movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I think it was in the box office, and I remember looking back at the screen, and it's the reveal, the last 15 minutes of the movie.
Oh, I see.
And I'm like, he just shot Ben Kingsley, but Ben Kingsley's not dead. And then I happened to be down in the concession area and overheard people talking like, whoa, that was so crazy, man. And I was like, oh. And then of course, doing the show and everything, people have always talked about the twist of Shutter Island. And so I've always known the twist, but actually seeing it play out. And of course,
and I think we should say before in your drive-in movie theater days, while you were working there, let's shout out to Bass real quick. Bass, if
Dude,
you're listening,
Bass, if you're listening,
it's been
buddy,
a while since we shouted out Bass, buddy.
we love you and we
Yeah,
miss you.
yeah,
But he's a papa now, so he's got other priorities.
that's right. He's got stuff going on.
Yeah.
Important stuff, neat stuff.
Yeah. But knowing the twist, considering this was a first watch for me, I started to see the clues pretty, no, I wouldn't say obvious, but I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think made the reveal that much more impactful, knowing that Scorsese was already cluing us in from the jump. That, like, not just all what seems.
Sure.
When was the first time you saw this movie, dude? Since you'd seen this before.
I saw it in the theater. Mom and I went to go see it. And we really liked it. We, didn't see the twist coming. Thought that was super neat. And then, I would watch it periodically. There are certain moments that I just love. That, I love when they first get to Ash Cliff. I love that musical score that cuts out immediately, which Scorsese does every now and then. I love the dream sequences. I think that they're incredible. And there is a very specific moment that I love more than anything, and we're going to talk about that later on, because it's important, obviously, to the discussion. But yeah, and every once in a while I would just pop it on, even just for an hour, and I would just, watch a little bit of it and go do something else or whatever, because I just love, like, the tone and the atmosphere, the overall sense of mystery, and it's great. So people tend to, I think, either general audiences or overly critical viewers don't really like this movie that much, which I think is super bizarre. They think that the twist is either, like, lame, or they're like, well, like, so, or that's it, or they found it underwhelming or whatever. I think at face value, if you watch the movie thinking there's some big conspiracy, which I guess technically there is, and then the big reveal, if you look at it just at face value and you don't watch it again, I think maybe that would hinder your enjoyment of it. I mean, I liked it right off the bat, but I like stuff like that. So, and again, if you don't like this movie, that's completely fine. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that I think with this movie, it's one of those very rare films where you watch the movie the first time, and then you watch it a second time, and it's a different movie the second time. It'll never be that first movie again, but man, that second go around, it's just like, it's different, right? It's you're paying attention to different things, and you see it from a whole new perspective. And instead of unsolving a mystery, you're piecing together an elaborate plan and how it was pulled off, which I really enjoyed. There is also a theory that we'll talk about later that I'm not sure I agree with, that we'll talk about later. So,
okay,
yeah.
Well, now for the first time in 3 weeks, Jeremy, will you hit everyone with a synopsis of this film?
Sure. Okay. The film follows Edward Daniels. He is a U.S. Marshal who is assigned to find a missing person in a maximum security mental hospital / prison. Her name is Rachel Solando, and he gets a new partner. His name is Chuck, and everything seems off. Everything seems strange. He doesn't feel like he's getting a straight answer from anybody. He is struggling with not only trying to find this missing person, and he feels like he's getting nowhere because no one's helping him, and no one's cooperating. But he's also struggling with these terrible dreams and these awful migraines, um, and he just feels like he's falling apart. Poor guy. Um, and so while going through this investigation, he feels like he's piecing together a conspiracy where the hospital is not all that it seems to be. The hospital is harboring dangerous secrets of human experimentation and other unethical medical practices. He feels like he's being drugged and he's being monitored and watched and followed and whatever. However, once he reaches the peak of this investigation, he is told that yes, he used to be a U.S. Marshal. However, over the past 2 years, he has been a patient at this mental institution, and that his mental breakdown manifested itself in a dissociation where he believes himself to still be a U.S. Marshal, and that he sort of lives amongst his neighbors and his fellow freemen. And coming to that realization, he decides perhaps maybe living in reality isn't the best way for him to live his life any longer. And that's Shutter Island.
Nice. So I think a good starting point, or maybe I'm wrong, would be to talk about the clues that are laid out for us very early on.
Well, I think the very first clue is that he's meeting Chuck on their way to the hospital,
mm-hmm.
To Ashcliff. They would have already met on the dock before they got on the ferry.
Yeah.
So it's so bizarre that they're meeting for the first time and they're almost there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now they do a very good job in sort of hemming and hawing over all of that and sort of playing it very casually and very realistically, and so you don't really think about it the first time.
Yeah.
But it is weird.
Well, and especially considering, this ferry, which you would assume would maybe be a civilian ferry, has restraints in it. That was the first thing that kind of tipped me off.
Okay.
That they had restraints, hooked up to the ceiling, and I'm like, yeah, that's not real. I don't think that's FDA approved right there.
Yeah, he doesn't. He also doesn't have cigarettes or matches or a lighter. Presumably, he wouldn't have those things because he's a patient.
Being a patient. Yeah.
The second clue is all of the guards on edge that he's walking up to the facility. Right? They all have their guns drawn. They look super nervous, and they're almost like they're waiting for something terrible to happen. And I think probably I have a lot of favorite performances in this movie. Top of the heap is John Carroll Lynch.
Yeah, 100%.
When Teddy says, "You act like insanity's, catching on or like contagious," that smile he gives is so good. And the first time you see it, you're sort of like, he's just, he's trying not to, be rude, and he's just trying to do his job. Like, let's not, but yeah, it's really just because he knows who he's talking to.
Yeah. Another clue for me was, how easily Teddy was able to get his gun and his holster out. Of course, having used to be a U.S. Marshal, he would have probably done that a lot. But Mark Ruffalo, Chuck, struggles. Like he'd never taken it off before.
Yeah.
And even Teddy's kind of like, huh, like that's weird.
But they do a really good job without, holding too long on things or giving something too much attention. Because as soon as that's over, we've moved on and we're, getting a tour of Ashcliff. The star of this movie, I think, is the editing and the sound design. It's little things too, like the whip pans to the buildings.
The different boards. Yeah,
I really liked. There is really no original score. I saw that. I read that Scorsese used musical compositions from or scores from other movies and things of the 30s and 40s, plus of course the classical music that's played as well, and the operatic music.
Interesting.
So, and of course the use of silence is used extremely well in this film as well. When he walks past that woman, who doesn't really have a lot of hair and her throat has been slit in the past. She's very scary. I'm really glad Haley wasn't here for that, because she's very scary looking. Again, all of the music drops, all the sound drops, and you just hear her shushing. Is very effective.
Yeah. And then meeting Ben Kingsley, I feel like we get one of our biggest clues when he's talking to them about Rachel and like, she's disassociated from killing her children. She believes she never did. She even believes that she's at home in the Berkshires, and we all have a role to play for her. There's
a little moment Ben Kingsley does. Again, watching this movie a second time, you get to see all of these acting choices and just how brilliantly proficient Scorsese is in directing his actors. Kingsley is going over all of the primitive mental health practices that that hospitals like Ashcliff used to do. And when he mentions that they used to drown patients, he looks at Teddy for a reaction. Again, it's really small, it's really subtle. And of course, on your first watch, you're not going to pick up on it. You're just going to think that he's, being, overly dramatic or hyperbolic to stress the importance of what they do at Ashcliff and the lengths they'll go to, which of course we know what those are, to cure their patients. The interactions with the patients and the staff, I am obsessed with. All right. During these interviews, like he's interviewing the nurses and the orderlies, and again, the first time you see it, you're like, these guys are super shady. Like, these guys are not giving full answers. These guys are hiding something. And really, they're just kind of annoyed.
That, I'm not necessarily jumping ahead here, but like, especially with the fact when we learn that all of this has been an elaborate role play, Ben Kingsley tells Andrew, Teddy, you've had the run of the place for 2 days. Like, he's essentially been running Ashcliff, kind of doing whatever he wants. Of course, not knowing.
No,
but
that's what I'm saying. Like, when he's interviewing, basically interrogating these people, like the nurse is sort of like put off by it, and she's you can tell she's been told to play along, but she's not super on board with it. The orderlies too.
I was gonna say the same with the guy from I don't know his name, but I know he's in that Star show Power, the Book of Power, or whatever. It was produced by 50 Cent. But you know, when he's like, yeah, that's it. I don't know how she got by me, and he's like grilling him, like, come on, there's something else you want to tell me? Like, you can tell that he's looking at Ben Kingsley like, really?
Yeah,
Like,
Joseph Sikora is his name.
yes.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah, he's kind of like, what do I say? You know, and it is really effective. All of these elements and all of these scenes and these choices, I do believe, really pay off the reveal, because you're projecting a sense of nefarious, or they're sort of, you know, trying to lead him in the wrong direction, or they're trying to hide a terrible secret, but really they're just trying to keep up the facade. They're trying to keep up the role play, and I think that's very effective. So would you like me? I'll talk about my favorite moment in the film.
Tell me your favorite moment.
I mean, hands down, I think about it all the time. Okay. Let me find her name. So, he's interviewing Bridget Kearns. Okay. She's played by Robin Bartlett.
Uh-huh.
And they're in the dining hall, and, you know, he's interviewing. First, I love that behind, also, when he's interviewing Peter Breen, played by Christopher Denham, you'd probably recognize him from like Argo, or something of that nature.
He looked familiar. Yeah.
There's a guard behind him, right? But there's also a guard behind Teddy, but there's not a guard behind Chuck. So when we're in these shots, there's always a guard behind Teddy, because there's a guard behind the patient, because he's also a patient. There's not a guard behind Chuck because he's a doctor, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So he's interviewing Bridget Kearns, and you can kind of tell on the second viewing that they're probably friends. You know, the way they talk to one another, and the way that she's sort of, you know, again, when she tries to warn him too, when she's writing in his notebook, because she knows that this is his chance to get out of here. You're not shackled up. You're not, you know, you're not surrounded by guards, technically, at least not as heavily. So, but anyway, there's a moment where she asks for a glass of water, and then she writes the note. Chuck comes back with a glass of water. She picks up an imaginary glass. Okay. And she pantomimes drinking from it. And in the next shot, she puts down a real glass. I think about this moment all the time.
Well,
I'm obsessed.
And for those of our listeners and watchers who have seen our short film that we made with our buddy Alex, we sort of recreated this with Paranoid.
Yeah.
And we kind of took it a little step further, which is where your Emily is playing. I think we just referred to her in the credits as my love. And we see you turn, you've got nothing in your hand, but Emily's there. And then right as soon as you go to put something down, Emily's gone, but there's a cup there.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we did?
I think so.
I'm like 90% certain that's what we did. But no, I agree, man, because the shot is very effective, because you're like, wait a minute. Mark Ruffalo, we literally just saw him put down the glass. Where's the glass?
It's really disorienting. And I watched this video, and I didn't like their explanation of it, because he didn't mention it, which I appreciated he mentioned it, because other people don't do that. But he was saying that it's his aversion to water, that he's imagining it not there. But if that were the case, it wouldn't be raining outside, and he wouldn't have come in on the ferry. And, That's ridiculous. So I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a clever way to sort of show a quick hallucination or dissociation,
Mm-hmm.
um, a disorienting moment that sort of has you thinking, what am I seeing? What is he seeing? What is really going on? I don't believe it to be any sort of metaphor of water by any means, because it
I
happens again.
agree.
Because it happens even before this. It happens in the dream sequence where it's Michelle Williams is holding the liquor bottle, and then it cuts back to her, and she's still miming holding it, but it's gone. So again, I don't think it has anything to do with the drownings or the water or anything like that. I think it really is just a disorienting moment.
I agree. Because, I mean, yeah, I could see where they would make that comparison, especially at the beginning when, he's panicking about being on the ferry.
Right.
And, and he's like, it's just water. A lot of water. I could see where they would draw that comparison, but the reason why he's vomiting is because he's going through withdrawals.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't taken his medication in a while.
Yeah.
And
it is sort of like I get that he wouldn't like to be on water, but if you wanted the metaphor to be consistent, then the ship would be floating on air.
Yeah.
If he is erasing all water from his mind, that's silly, right? So no, I don't think that's the case.
No, because especially then we would have this multiple times when he takes, what he thinks is aspirin, and Ben Kingsley hands him a glass of water. Then we would have it there too. So
exactly. So I mean,
like I said, I can see where they were drawing that conclusion, but
by the way,
yeah,
that video had a lot of views. So,
well, hey, Return of the King just skyrocketed out of nowhere, and when it got a comment, so
yeah, you're right. We're getting there. So, okay. Did you pick up on it the first time? I'm sure you did. I mean, it's not hard to miss the glass.
Oh yeah, almost. I mean, immediately. She, as you just pantomime, she brings it up, and I'm like, where did the fucking glass go?
Yeah.
And then she puts it, and then she brings her hand back down, and then I'm like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fantastic shot. And of course, it's not like one of those like how did they pull that off shots. It's very easy how they pulled it off. They did a close up of her pantomiming, and then put the camera behind her, and then there's the glass. Like
it's just effective. I love it, and again, I do think about it quite often because it's just fun little movie tricks that you can do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I mean that's almost exactly how we did it for the Paranoid short. Is we shot with Emily's back to the camera. We see you, and then we flip the camera. Emily's gone, and we're behind you.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. Hey, everyone, if you haven't, hopefully Future Rain will put a little thing up there. Go watch Paranoid after you listen to this. I think that's our best short, honestly, dude. Like,
I've only been in two, so yeah, sure, yeah.
Well, and hang on, everyone, shameless plug. I think that's because we didn't have a script, and we were just like, what would a paranoid guy do? Like, okay, yeah, he'd put the newspapers up on the wall, and he'd, try to, and I think that's what also made it so fun. Granted, I don't think we actually had to wait till nighttime to film, which made it more creepy. Being in your grandparents' house at night,
yeah,
filming in the dark, which made it 10 times creepier. But anyway,
well, speaking of the short, this is a great segue. There were a few elements that we did there that I took inspiration from David Lynch from. I think that besides David Lynch, I think these dream sequences are some of the best dream sequences I've ever seen. Again, excluding David Lynch things, because David Lynch is the master of dream sequences.
100%.
But these are incredible.
Yeah. And also, we hope David Lynch gets better.
Yes, of course.
He's got emphysema,
Yeah,
or something with his lungs right now. So we hope it gets better.
we can't live without
he
David
needs
Lynch.
to give he needs to give us one more film before he
Goes to the Black Lodge.
disappears. Yeah, it goes to the Black Lodge forever. We need one more film. But yeah, the dream sequences are phenomenal. And of course, I've seen videos of how Martin Scorsese, because as we've talked about in the past with Scorsese and Fincher, their use of CGI, and I haven't watched like a full breakdown, but like of how they filmed Leo holding Michelle Williams and she turns to ash in his hands. It's so effective. But it's so effective that it's, this use of practical and CGI. And it just works so well, man.
To me, it's the lack of music, the juxtaposing imagery. So you have the ash falling indoors. No one's really drawing attention to it, which I really like, which you wouldn't in a dream. Her being very cryptic, and of course the editing, the intercuts and the jump cuts, and it's masterfully done. The scene or the shot where she turns around and her back is charred, surprised the hell out of me when I saw it the first time. And because again, we're feeding into this false narrative that she died in a fire, which is not true.
It was the smoke that got her.
That's what's important. So it's incredible. The dream sequences are not to be missed. If you watch this movie for anything, it'd be for that, because it truly is great. All right. The sort of subplot, not quite subplot, because it's all backstory for Teddy / Andrew Laeddis, is the liberation of Dachau.
Yes, yeah.
Because of course the war trauma feeds into him coming home, him drinking, him paying less attention to very important things, and then of course that leads to her, finally losing her mind and drowning the kids. The liberation of Dachau sequences are also incredible. The imagery of the falling papers that are sort of like the falling ash in the dream sequence. Again, masterfully done.
Yes, 100%.
Especially when it starts soaking in the blood on the floor. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I feel like this film is really about processing extreme guilt, extreme depression, and just falling into despair and escaping all of that any way you can. Which is what Andrew ends up doing by dissociating.
Yes.
And then of course his daughter being in these flashbacks and in these dream sequences that he believes are Rachel Salando's kids, and her daughter. Emily Mortimer, by the way, incredible as Rachel Salando, / the nurse.
Yeah.
And that's another dream sequence that I really, really enjoyed, which is where he confronts Andrew Laeddis, who is not the real Andrew Laeddis, Elias Cotes. Anyway, he was in Zodiac. Probably most well known for Zodiac.
Oh, I thought you were going to say most well known for Jesse in the live action version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
You're right. You're right. My bad.
Yeah, show the man respect.
Casey Jones.
Yeah, Casey Jones. Yeah, when he showed up, man, so knowing what we know, do you think I'm gonna get maybe a little too analytical here, but that's what we do on this show. Do you think buried somewhere deep in Andrew's subconscious, this is how he sees himself?
Probably. Probably because he sees him as the monster who killed his wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that he's grotesque. He's got that scar, with staples in it across his face.
He's got a dead eye.
And he's this sort of sadistic, sadist. Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good connection to make because, he gave him his name. So I think that's a good indication that that's how he views himself, and that's how he views his actions. That's how he views what he had become by coming home from the war and ignoring all of these signs that Dolores was slipping and was slowly losing her grip on reality. And yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Yeah, that sequence is great, and Emily Mortimer is so good in that.
Dude, yeah, she's. Even though you told me that she's in the film, I kind of forgot that she was in it. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, Emily Mortimer.
Yeah, she's great.
Now, do you think when they find Rachel, and she she does the whole mistaken identity, like, oh, you're my husband, but then it's like, wait, who the fuck are you? I buried my husband. Do you think that was another part of the role play for like the trigger to trigger something?
Yes, because she's a nurse. So this is it's all part of the role play. There are certain moments in this film where I'm like, is that part of it? Were they expecting him to? Well, all right, so it's hard because there are moments in this movie where I'm like, wow, that's really elaborate. But then I'm thinking, did that really happen? Because as this movie progresses further and further, his withdrawal from the medication gets worse and worse and worse, and his symptoms will start to come back. And one of those symptoms are delusions. And so that's why he's seeing Dolores everywhere, and that's why he's seeing the girl, which he believes to be Rachel Salando's daughter, which is his daughter, Rachel. But, like, for instance, when he scales the side of the cliff and gets into the cave, I don't think that actually happened. First off, Chuck's not with him.
Yeah.
And Chuck is with him everywhere. Okay. Because he's the doctor, right? So he has to be there. And what is his real name?
I just know Dr. Sheen. Yeah, Dr. Sheen.
By the way, when he's interviewing Bridget Keener or Kearns, when he's asked about Dr. Sheehan, we asked her about him. She kind of looks at Chuck for a second.
Oh yeah,
because she's panicking because she knows that's Dr. Sheehan. It's great, brilliant acting. Okay, so I don't think that actually happened when he meets the real Rachel Salando. This is just, again, all of this false information that he's gathered, and all of these these theories and these conspiracies that he is soaking up. I think that's all culminated in this grand delusion, which is him meeting the real Rachel Solando. And that's not really taking place. I think it's just taking place in his mind. I don't. They wouldn't let him scale a cliff. That's far too dangerous. And it's too risky because he could fall, right? Because he saw Chuck fall, which obviously didn't happen either. And so again, these are parts of his, his symptoms.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Oh, dude, dude, if you're thinking this is crazy, I'm gonna hit you with a crazy theory that I don't believe is true, but is interesting to think about. We'll talk about it in a minute. But go ahead.
Well, I'm more so just kind of like, I mean, that makes sense, but also, like with him scaling the rock face, the cliff face, I'm just like, I think he did do that. I mean, obviously we know he didn't meet the real Rachel Solando, but I'm like, because I don't know, I can't explain him re-climbing back up. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I get it. But I feel like it'd be too risky if we're to think about this practically. And they're taking a lot of measures to keep him in sight and to make sure Chuck is always with him, or Dr. Sheehan. But I mean, maybe he did kind of escape away for a minute. But when he gets back, there's some great. I mean, it's like you really got to pay attention. You really got to like turn your ears on. But when they get back to the common area, some orderlies and some guards are talking with some patients, and they keep looking at him. And like Bridget starts laughing, and Christopher, Peter starts, keeps snickering and looking over there. And one of the orderly goes, "Stop looking at him! Don't look at him! Look at me! Don't look at him!"
It's Glenn, the guy. He's like, just don't look at him! Just don't look at him!
Don't look at him! And it's you really gotta pay attention. But I like that they know it's almost over, and so they're almost tired of doing it.
Well, and maybe you can help me out with this. This is the one part of the role play that I kind of didn't understand.
Okay.
Why were they trying to gaslight him in that he came to the island alone?
That's a really good question. I thought about that the other day. And I don't know. I think it's to further the conspiracy because he needs to get to the lighthouse. So if they tack on another layer of conspiracy, another misinformation, or another like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, you didn't come here with anybody. Then he'll push himself even further to find out the truth, and then he'll eventually find his way to the lighthouse. I mean, almost, killing a guard, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, he probably, dude, yeah, for real. Okay, so it seems like we're leading to the reveal, which almost. I mean, you said in the synopsis.
Almost. I do want to discuss George Noyce.
Jackie Earle Haley.
Yeah, Jackie Earle Haley. What's his last name?
Rorschach.
Yeah. Freddy Krueger. Yeah. The bad one. Not his fault. So George Noyce knows Andrew Laeddis. They knew each other before Ashcliff, and now they're together in Ashcliff. And the reason why Teddy is wearing a bandage on his head is because he got in a fight with George like a few days before. So I like that. I like that, they don't mention it, but if you put it together, that's why he's sort of bruised and cut up, is because of that fight. And George is having none of this role play bullshit, which I like. I like that, he's just straight up with him, telling him what's up. And as an audience, we're like, he's crazy. What is he talking about? That this is all a game and, he's just a rat in a maze. What does that mean? Is there a conspiracy? It's telling us the truth, but also diverting our expectations more because we don't know who to believe.
Yeah. We don't know. Yeah, especially, they kind of double down on that a little bit more, especially when, George is like, you got to let her go. You have to let her go. Because I'm sure George knows that Dolores is haunting him, and if he lets her go, then maybe he'll be free and, not to worry. But yeah, that whole interaction, you're right. It doubles down, at least for when he's Teddy, that there is a conspiracy going on here. And and of course, he misinterprets the whole, you did this. So he thinks I'm responsible for why they beat you. Yeah. But then of course it's like, no,
you literally did this.
You literally, beat the shit out of him. That's that interaction is so interesting because it's so misleading, yet like you said, he's being honest with Andrew the whole time. I'm telling you like it is, because I'm not going to play into this little game that you're this great U.S. Marshal.
No, maybe at one time.
Yeah. Well, that was probably, the ass beating probably was like, yeah, no, fuck this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Which means that, which of course he would be, that Andrew is in Ward C. That's where he resides.
Yeah, because he's violent.
Because he's extremely violent. Which is odd, but it makes sense because he's been violent so far. Spurts here and there. So okay. Before we get to the lighthouse, probably the scariest performance belongs to Ted Levine as Warden.
Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, he's terrifying. He's great at it, of course. And yeah, that interaction they have about being violent and being violent men, and how they're similar, and he's trying. I'm not quite sure he likes this whole role play thing.
I don't think he does.
No, because Kingsley, Cawley, Dr. Cawley, doesn't seem to like him very much, and they seem to kind of have this disdain for one another. I think that if Warden were to have his say, they would just, beat Andrew within an inch of his life, and then see if that works.
Well, and I'm glad you're bringing up Ted Levine, because we haven't even talked about Max von Sydow yet.
That's true.
I think Max von Sydow's character, him and the Warden, mm-hmm. I think they have an understanding. But Dr. Cawley, Ben Kingsley, he's our caring psychiatrist. Like, kind of what he tells Teddy in the middle point of the movie. Like, I think if we treat patients with respect and care, they'll get better. And I believe that. I think he's being genuine. Otherwise, he wouldn't have risked his entire career, his career and Dr. Sheehan's career, to pull off this elaborate role play.
Right.
But I think Max von Sydow and the warden, I think they have an understanding of most patients maybe not deserve, but this isn't going to work for these kinds of patients. They need a strong arm.
Yeah.
They need to be lobotomized.
Yeah. Yeah. Max von Sydow. I mean, it's Max von Sydow. He's incredible. As
the
this
three-eyed raven.
Yeah, as this very very cold and calculated former German, scientist, psychiatrist, I suppose.
Well, and also we should also point out that Teddy got him with a sedative to knock him out, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Like,
well, and I mean, and again, second viewing, you're like, he was right to have that. He was right to have that sedative. He just couldn't get the jump on him. Because he was becoming increasingly more aggravated and violent.
Yeah, especially the last, all leading up to the lighthouse. Yeah, Teddy is becoming more and more increasingly violent towards everyone.
Yeah,
of course. I mean, as you just said, he blows up a car.
Yeah,
like,
with that ugly tie.
Yeah. But yeah.
All right, Lighthouse.
Okay, Lighthouse. We already did that movie.
I guess we did.
Yeah, this is really interesting because the movie has sort of, throughout its runtime, has sort of mythologized the lighthouse.
In a way, I think, John Carroll Lynch was sort of dismissive of it because he didn't want him up there. It's not time for him to be up there, obviously. And so he said it was, I think, sewage treatment or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I think, yeah, you're right. Throughout the movie, they do sort of hint at its possible significance.
Yeah, because even Jackie Earle Haley is like, they're going to take me to the lighthouse, man. They're going to take me to the lighthouse.
Yeah.
And then when we get in there with Teddy, and he's working his way up the spiral staircase, which, dude, also, I loved that Martin was moving with the camera with the spiral. Dude.
Yeah.
It's actually, the lighthouse is kind of clean and abandoned in a way. There's no signs that they ever did experiments there or anything really at the lighthouse.
Yeah.
Even when he finds Ben Kingsley waiting for him, that's stuff that they clearly brought over there,
right,
for him. And it's this whole sequence is just, this is what we've been building towards for, an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, so the reveal is obviously fantastic because once you start to think back and whenever things start to really make sense and they start to, fit together. The one thing that I've never understood, and it's because my brain doesn't work this way, that I don't see why people would bother with this, and it makes it seem unrealistic to me, are anagrams. My brain doesn't work in anagram, and so like when he said, Edward Daniels is the same letters as Andrew Latis, it's like, okay, why would someone take the time to do that? And how would you catch it? I don't know. It's because my dyslexic brain doesn't work anagrams. Can't do it.
Well, and also with a broken brain as Andrew's, of course his brain is going to try to, take the already existing letters of his name,
sure,
and Voldemort it, and
I just don't know if that's a thing people really do. I don't know. And that's just this isn't just this movie, it's other movies that involve, clues hidden in anagrams. You know,
Yeah.
I don't get. But again, that's because I wouldn't be able to do that, and so I can't fathom a world where someone would do it, understand it, and then someone else would be able to uncover it as an anagram. You know,
Hmm.
but anyway, that's just a small bit. So, um, of course, when he comes into the lighthouse, Ben Kingsley says, "Why are you all wet, baby?" Um,
Yeah.
which on the surface level is like, that's weird, but
Yeah.
the flashback, I mean, it totally pays off because I think there was a moment even before that where it happens again. Um, and then of course they break down everything for him. And you're right, that shot with him shooting Collie and the blood just spurts behind him, and then it cuts back to him and he's fine, and there's no blood.
Yeah.
It's akin to the imaginary drinking glass. That is really effective, and the plastic gun and all of that.
Yeah.
But here's something that they mention that at least I didn't see in the stuff that I looked up, that people don't really mention, is that they've mentioned they've done it before.
Yes. Yeah. That 9 months ago, they had a breakthrough,
Yeah.
but he regressed.
Which I think perhaps they're implying that they tried something similar to this, but probably at a smaller scale,
Hmm.
and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is probably why they've probably given him such uh, loose reins and letting him essentially run the asylum.
I mean, yeah, just have a free pass to go anywhere you want. Okay, so when he comes to,
Hmm.
and he acknowledges that he is Andrew Laeddis. Here's why I think that this film is an exploration of despair, depression, and guilt, is that yes, they have taken him back from this dissociation and this psychosis and this delusion. But to me, I feel so bad for him because now he has to remember all of these things.
Hmm.
He has to remember what it was like to show up that day and his wife has drowned all three of his kids.
Yeah.
And that he murdered her in retaliation. Um, as if to sort of set her free, right? As if
Yeah.
to sort of cure her from her delusion.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it was like he was angry as well. Um, Mostly at himself for not paying attention to the signs of her debilitating mental state.
Hmm.
But I think at the very end, when I believe, and I don't think it's ambiguous at all, I think that he was still Andrew Laeddis and cured of this delusion. I think that he chooses to be lobotomized.
I agree. I was hoping we were going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree because I even read it um, when he says the title of our episode. Uh, Mark Ruffalo, Sheenan is sort of taken aback. Like, wait a minute, he's never said something this intellectual to me when he's been Teddy.
Yeah.
And so he even tests the waters and goes, Teddy? And he doesn't respond. So yeah, I agree that
Yeah.
he was cured. He now has a grip on reality that he is Andrew Laeddis, that his wife killed their kids and he killed his wife. But like you said, he doesn't want to live in this reality. He doesn't want to have to remember this reality constantly.
Right, because
And I think that's why.
it's not just his kids he lost. He lost his wife, and then he also is he also has to live with, yes,
The guilt.
he was a part of the liberation of Dachau, but there were lives that he didn't save also.
Mm-hmm.
They were all of those lives that he did that were prisoners of Dachau, but the piles of frozen bodies spilling out of those train cars, he didn't
Yeah.
save. And so he feels tremendous guilt about that, which is why he started drinking in the first place and disassociating, not psychologically disassociating, but just being emotionally distant and not seeing that his wife is slowly losing her mind. And maybe seeing it and not caring, or seeing it and not taking the steps to help. And it ended up destroying his family and his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially when he says when he's lucid that he killed his kids.
Yeah.
Because had he been paying attention to Dolores and taking it seriously, he probably could have saved his kids. But I think you're right. I think this disassociation really began when he came home from the war, and he didn't have the capacity to deal with it.
Right.
And so it was easier for them just to move away. And
from her burning down the apartment.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad we talked about this because I remember seeing that scene when I knew of the reveal of it seeming like it didn't take.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always under the impression that, yeah, it didn't take, that he regressed again.
Yeah.
But now watching the movie, I was like, oh, no. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
That's why he, when they walk up, he willingly goes with them.
Yeah.
Because of course, what are they going to say now? Like, wait, no, you're lucid. Like, no, we're not going to lobotomize you now.
Yeah, I mean, he wants them to believe that he's regressed, and then he's gonna, he left a little breadcrumb for Sheehan, but that's about it, and then he's gonna go be lobotomized.
Do you think it's because he respects Sheehan for sticking it out with him for so long?
I think he needs to know that all of that work wasn't for nothing, but he has chosen to live as sort of blissfully ignorant. Yeah. Because he can't live with what he knows and what he's lived through and what he's done. So
yeah, I agree.
So
tell me this theory that you heard that you don't really agree with.
Okay. It is my understanding that some people believe that it is not storming outside at all.
Okay.
That it is part of his delusion, and that they have planted seeds for him to believe that it is storming outside, and that's why he can't leave.
I mean, okay.
Their explanations are the switchboard operator sort of, when he says all the lines are down because of the storm, he kind of looks back when they walk away to make sure he can like plug things back in because they are fine. There's a line that John Carroll Lynch says in the car when they get in after seeing Dr. Crawley or Cawley, where he says, "Nice night." And instead of being sarcastic, they think he might be being genuine. And then also when he is choosing to be lobotomized, the yard is completely clear of debris. There is no evidence that there was ever a storm. I think it could be like a few days later. Like, I don't believe this was the next day.
I agree. Because, like, okay. Because there's that line that Ben Kingsley has, Dr. Cawley, when he tells him, we've been through this before, the storm. So I agree that maybe they've laid out breadcrumbs in the past, like maybe with the switchboard operator, but I think there really was a hurricane.
I mean, maybe because again, there are some things in there like the electric fence being broken by the debris, by the limbs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, people are actively okay. I would believe it more if while they were searching for Rachel Solando out in the open, like on the rocks and in the fields, that if no one else was wearing a raincoat or a poncho, I got it. If Chuck wasn't wearing a poncho when they make it to the graveyard.
I was just about to say, like, this is like, what we've always talked about, the whole Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Then all
Genie
the
ruins it.
genie, yeah, the sequences with Genie don't make any sense.
Don't make any sense.
I agree, and I think the smoking gun is them going out to the graveyard. That
Yeah.
I think that hurricane really happened. Now, maybe a past session they used a storm as an excuse for that he can't leave. But I think in this situation of what we're seeing as the audience, I think there really was a storm. And I think it really hit that hard. Because, I mean, we also see orderlies trying to chop up, trees.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Get them out.
Like he's being, his bed is being dripped on.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's him. I didn't see anybody else get dripped on. But, the orderly saying that these clothes will be washed and cleaned, here's some orderly clothes or whatever. Like, I don't know. I like the idea of there not being a storm. That's really cool and that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's true. I think there was a storm and it was just a coincidence, to be honest.
I agree.
But again, I like the idea. The idea is cool.
Because that would make, because I mean, maybe the weather there is so temperamental that they can use like, oh, there's a storm coming.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think you're right. I think this is more of a coincidence that there actually was a storm. But yeah, I mean, but again, this proves how good this movie is, that there is so much discourse that people, kind of like with Lynch, people are trying to read between the lines.
Yeah.
I would say, though, unlike Lynch, Scorsese, granted, he didn't work on the script was sent to him, but I think with how he places the camera and his direction of the actors, he's not giving us a lot to read between the lines. He's giving us clues, but I think he is being straightforward with everything else.
Yeah, I agree.
Where Lynch, yeah, we can read between the lines and maybe find hidden meaning that he was leaving for audience participation, but I don't think Scorsese was doing that with this. I think he was like, no, it's...
I don't think that he, for sure he wasn't alluding to there is no rain outside.
Yeah.
I think that's too far of a stretch for a delusion when the delusions hadn't gotten that bad yet.
I like I like what you said about it being just a few days later when he wants to be lobotomized. Because maybe that would give Sheehan and Cawley time to go to the board of directors and be like, hey, it worked. He's cured.
Yeah.
And then he could be crazy so he can be lobotomized.
Yeah. I don't think it was like the next day or a few hours later. I think that's crazy.
Because I like what you said about his little breadcrumb for Sheehan as sort of like a, hey, this wasn't in vain. I just don't want to live with these memories anymore.
Right.
But, yeah, man. Well, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to wrap up.
Yeah, the movie's great, man. I mean, again, it's Scorsese. It's a knockout. He is truly one of our greatest living directors.
I saw somewhere that he had mentioned he regrets making this one.
Really?
Yeah, which, I mean, I get it, because it's not like his normal thing. It's not like a passion project or anything close to what he, that comes from his personal life, which is what he likes to do.
Yeah.
but I don't think anyone could have done it any better.
I agree. I agree. As we were just discussing off camera, off mic, this is one of the few adaptations of, what's the author's name again?
Dennis Lehane.
Dennis Lehane's films that are actually very well received. Of course, Ben Affleck gave it another stab and failed miserably.
The second time.
But but of the other four, this is one that's been really well received. So it is interesting that Martin would be like, yeah, didn't do that good.
I mean, but again, I understand why you would think that, because it's almost like this is an A-list, this is an A-list director filming a B movie script, essentially, if you want to think about it that way, because the story isn't what you would consider like if you want to use a movie snob thing, this isn't like a critically acclaimed story or anything. This isn't this is a psychological thriller whodunit. Yeah. Which doesn't always translate to high critical regard, but when you throw Scorsese in the mix and you have his expertise and his precision and detail, then you have something that would be maybe a B minus level and elevated it to an A. And I think maybe that's probably what it is.
Maybe. Well, and then again, this gave him the opportunity to work with Sir Ben Kingsley, so he could turn around and call him up again and be like, hey, I'm working on this kids movie. I would really love for you to play Georges Méliès. And of course, Ben Kingsley is going to be like, 100%.
See, that is 1,000% up Scorsese's alley, because it's film history.
Fictional history.
Yeah. Yes.
Or historical fiction.
Right. Historical
fiction. Which we talked about. And everyone, if you want to see that episode, hopefully Future Rain, we'll put it up here too, when we talked about Hugo. Yeah. But I mean, I guess I get it. Now that you've kind of explained it, I get it. But I mean, this film is so expertly done that you're right. I don't think anyone could have done better.
No. Maybe Fincher.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe Fincher.
Because I mean, because Fincher's good at this psychological thriller. I mean,
he's good at this. Yeah.
Have people not seen Zodiac?
I mean, coming to 4K very soon.
God, I can't wait.
I know, me either. All right. Would you like to tell us what we're talking about next week?
Well, as I kind of gave you a little bit of a hint, I was going to have to find something to follow this. So I narrowed it down to 3.
Okay.
But I'm not going to tell you what they are, obviously. But there's something about the third one. If you choose number 3, number 3 is another surprise. It's not on my list. I had this idea today.
Okay.
I was like, okay. Now the other 2 are on my list.
Okay.
And I think they would be good follow-ups. But number 3, I was like, I want to throw a surprise in the mix. And just see if Jeremy picks it.
Okay. This is another warning, by the way, that this is a Scorsese heavy season, by the way.
Yes.
We got 3 more to go. So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do number 3.
Number 3? Okay.
Number 3.
I mean, I knew I shouldn't have built it up. I should have just told you it was a surprise, but So number 3, hang on. I need to see when the movie came out.
Okay.
You're gonna lose your shit, dude.
I can't wait.
You're gonna lose your shit. Okay. All right. So same year as this movie, 2010. We are discussing the biopic drama written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by David Fincher.
Amazing.
Next week, buddy, we're doing The Social Network.
The Social Network. Very cool. That's very, very exciting. Said to be one of the greatest films of the new millennium. I agree. You have Fincher, you have Sorkin, Trent Reznor for the score. Yeah, this movie is awesome. So
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
So I'm gonna be honest. When the first time I saw it, I loved it. But I didn't get it immediately. I was like, I don't like. I mean, it's not hard to get, but I was like, I don't know. Like, I didn't get it, and then I watched it a second time, and I understood it a little bit more. I was like, okay. It was the third time. I was like, I get it. I fully get it now.
It's one of those films that it's a fun biopic because it plays sort of fast and loose with what happened and who said what and this happened here and whatever. It's not as loose as like Steve Jobs is.
Yeah.
And it's
I was going to say as where this is. Well, I mean, the Steve Jobs film also written by Aaron Sorkin.
Right.
They took from the biography, Steve Jobs, but I think Sorkin did the same thing and took from the biography,
The Accidental Billionaires.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like I want to say I researched that after the second time I saw it to see how much was true, and I think they said it was like about 75% accurate. The other 25% was probably made up.
Not bad.
I think I could be wrong. I might have to double check it.
In terms of biopics, it's probably the most entertaining.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree. And again, I think that's because of Sorkin's writing, Fincher's direction, and this stacked cast of these people that were kind of almost about to really blow up. Because, I mean, yeah, Jesse had done Zombieland the year before this.
Yeah.
But it really seemed like after The Social Network, he was just...
Yeah.
He was just going. And then, of course, Andrew Garfield.
Yep.
Justin Timberlake, really got to flex. Rooney Mara, yeah. Not Benedict. Brenda Song.
Yep.
Armie Hammer, I guess.
Here we go.
But yeah, man, the movie's great. And again, that came across my mind today. I think it was because I saw something with Andrew Garfield, and I was like, we've been teasing a lot of eventually doing The Social Network. And I was like, you know what? That'll be it. That'll be Jeremy's surprise.
Cool. Fun. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, all right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode on Shutter Island, and we'll see you next week for The Social Network.